All right, let's talk about the subtle art of getting things from the factory to your doorstep.
Because there is an art to it, isn't there?
A lot more than I think most people realize.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where our deep dive today takes us with the help of RoleCatcher.com. We're exploring the world of packing machinery engineers.
These are the folks who make sure your new phone arrives in pristine condition, your cereal stays crunchy, and your online orders show up without a scratch.
They are the unsung heroes of the supply chain, making sure all that stuff we buy, all those boxes and packages, are designed, built, and sealed to perfection. And RoleCatcher.com gives us some real insight into what these engineers actually do. It's a blend of, well, you could say artistry, but also some serious engineering muscle.
So what's the day-to-day look like for a packing machinery engineer? Do they just like hang out in factories, tightening bolts?
Well, there's definitely some bolt tightening involved, but it's so much more than that. Think about it. These are the people overseeing the installation, the maintenance, the repair of these incredible machines that make mass production possible. RoleCatcher uses the phrase overseeing packaging machinery, which really captures the breadth of it all.
So they're not just fixing things when they break, they're making sure those breakdowns never happen in the first place.
Exactly. They're all about preventing problems, optimizing performance, and squeezing every ounce of efficiency out of these complex systems. They're analyzing performance data, troubleshooting issues, and constantly on the lookout for ways to make things faster, smoother, better.
So if I'm picturing this right, we're not talking about a cushy office job here.
Not quite. RoleCatcher paints a pretty vivid picture of the work environment, and it's definitely not for everyone.
Hit me with the realities. What are we talking about here?
Think controlled chaos. It's a factory floor, so you've got the whirring of machinery, the rhythmic chug of the production line. There's energy, there's movement, and let's be honest, there are potential hazards too.
Okay, so maybe earplugs are part of the dress code?
Quite possibly. RoleCatcher mentions potential exposure to loud noises, dust, sometimes even hazardous materials, depending on what's being packaged. It's a demanding environment, both physically and mentally.
Definitely not your average 9 to 5. But there has to be a payoff for all that hard work and sensory overload, right?
Oh, absolutely. For starters, this is a field that's in high demand, like really high demand. And RoleCatcher predicts that demand is only going to keep growing. We are a society of consumers, which means we need people who can keep those packages moving.
So job security is a pretty nice perk in this economy.
It's a huge perk. And with that high demand comes, you guessed it, attractive salaries and tons of room for advancement.
So you're telling me I can potentially make bank while surrounded by giant robots? Sign me up.
Laughing. Well, it's not quite a sci-fi movie, but it's clear that this is a career path with a lot of potential, both financially and in terms of job satisfaction. But, and I think this is important to highlight, RoleCatcher is very clear that this is not a career for just anyone. You need a very specific skill set, a passion for problem solving, and maybe a high tolerance for loud noises.
A love of a well-organized production line, perhaps.
That's thing, exactly.
All right, so we've established that it's not just about slapping some duct tape on a conveyor belt. There's some serious expertise involved in keeping those packages moving.
Absolutely. And a lot of that expertise comes from, well, good old-fashioned education.
So what are we talking about here? Engineering degrees? Trade schools? What's the path to becoming a packing machinery engineer?
You're on the right track. RoleCatcher's data points to a bachelor's degree as the most common requirement for entry-level positions. Think mechanical engineering, packaging engineering, industrial engineering.
So a solid grounding in the fundamentals of how things work. Gears, motors, sensors.
Exactly. You've got to know the nuts and bolts, literally. But RoleCatcher also points out that a traditional four-year degree isn't the only path. Certifications are becoming increasingly important in this field.
So there are like specialized courses you can take to boost your credentials.
Exactly. Think of it like leveling up your skills. And there are some big names in the certification world that carry a lot of weight. RoleCatcher specifically mentions the Certified Packaging Professional, the CPP.
Okay, so that's CPP for those taking notes.
Right, CPP. That's the one to remember if you're serious about packaging. And then there's the Certified Maintenance and Reliability Professional, the CMRP.
Got it, CMRP. So these certifications tell potential employers you're not just winging it, you've got the knowledge to back it up.
Exactly. They show you're dedicated to the field, you've invested in yourself, and you've got the skills to solve real-world problems. And speaking of skills, this is where RoleCatcher's data gets really interesting.
Oh, do tell. What kind of unexpected skills are we talking about here?
Well, they've crunched the numbers, analyzed thousands of job descriptions, and you know what they found. One of the top skills for a packing machinery engineer is active listening.
Active listening. Wait, really? I thought we were talking about engineering, not therapy.
Right. It seems counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about it. Imagine you're on that factory floor. Things are moving fast. Machines are humming. You need to be able to listen carefully to the technicians, understand the nuances of what they're describing.
Because a missed word or a miscommunication could mean the difference between a smoothly running operation and a total packaging meltdown.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And beyond that, you've got to be able to read and interpret those complex technical manuals, decipher schematics.
So it's not just about being a gearhead, it's about being a communicator, a problem solver, almost like a detective of the production line.
I love that analogy of a detective of the production line. Because you're right, you've got to gather the clues, analyze the evidence, and then come up with a solution that keeps those packages moving.
And speaking of moving, let's talk about career progression. Where does a budding packing machinery engineer go from here? What's the next step on this career ladder? So we've talked about the education, the skills, the almost detective-like intuition you need to succeed in this field. But let's map it out. Where does a packing machinery engineer actually start their journey?
Well, RoleCatcher gives us a pretty clear picture of the typical career path, and it usually begins with an entry-level position. Think junior packing machinery engineer.
Okay, so you're fresh out of school, maybe you aced those certifications we talked about. What's next?
It's all about hands-on experience at that stage.
Yeah.
You're assisting the more senior engineers, getting familiar with the equipment, learning the ropes of the factory floor.
Lots of learning on the job, figuring out how to troubleshoot in real time.
Exactly. And probably a few wrenches thrown in there, literally.
Mhm.
But as you gain experience, you move up the ladder. You become an intermediate packing machinery engineer. And that's where you start taking on more responsibility, maybe leading some projects, managing teams.
So less about just fixing things and more about making those big picture decisions, those improvement plans we talked about earlier.
You got it. You're the one making sure those production lines are humming, that the packaging is top-notch, and that everything's running like a well-oiled, machine.
And then comes the big leagues, the senior packing machinery engineer. What does that look like?
Now you're the conductor of this packaging orchestra. You're overseeing everything. You might be mentoring those junior engineers, staying ahead of all the latest technologies. It's a lot of responsibility.
But also a lot of influence, right? You're shaping the future of how products get packaged and delivered. And speaking of shaping the future, RoleCatcher brings up this interesting point about continuous learning.
Oh, absolutely. This is a field that's constantly evolving, new technologies, new materials, new challenges.
So you can't just rest on your laurels. You've got to keep those skills sharp.
Precisely. And RoleCatcher, they're all about giving you the tools to do just that. They've got this massive database of over 120,000 interview questions.
120,000. That's a lot of potential interview prep.
Right. And it's not just a list of questions. They have AI-powered practice sessions, personalized feedback. They even analyze your body language in mock interviews.
So it's like having a virtual career coach in your back pocket. And speaking of interview questions, let's throw out a couple of RoleCatchers examples just to give our listeners a taste of what to expect.
I love that idea. Fire away.
All right, here's a classic one. Describe a time you had to troubleshoot a complex issue with packaging machinery. How would you answer that one?
Well, you definitely want to have a specific example ready to go, something that really highlights your problem-solving skills. Maybe a time when you had to think on your feet, analyze the situation, and come up with a creative solution.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you think, how you approach a challenge.
Exactly. They want to see that you can handle the pressure, that you can think critically, and that you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. Metaphorically speaking, of course.
And then to really gauge your passion for the field, they might ask something like, how do you stay updated on new developments in packaging machinery technology?
Oh, that's a great one. It's your chance to talk about the industry journals you follow, maybe a conference you attended, or even just how you geek out on the latest packaging innovations in your spare time.
It shows you're not just there for a paycheck. You're genuinely interested in the world of packaging, and that's a big plus for potential employers. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of packing machinery engineers, we've covered a lot of ground. From the factory floor to the interview hot seat, we've explored the skills, the education, and the career paths that await these behind-the-scenes heroes of the supply chain.
And we've seen that it's not all about gears and grease. It's about communication, problem solving, and a passion for innovation.
And maybe a little bit of love for a perfectly sealed package. If this deep dive has sparked your curiosity, I encourage you to check out RoleCatcher.com. They have a wealth of resources to help you explore this fascinating field, from detailed job descriptions to those AI-powered interview practice sessions we talked about. So who knows? Maybe you'll discover your next career adventure in the ever-evolving world of packing machinery engineering.